It would be great. It would be great if you can tell me a bit more about yourself. I saw bits and pieces about what you do, but what should everybody know about you that we wouldn't hear online?
I graduated college twice. I wrote my own book called The Inspirational Story Ethan A. Poetic Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationship, and Resiliency. I've been featured on television, radio, podcasts, newsletters, magazine, and I was a recent recipient of the NAACP award.
What's that award?
It's a nonprofit organization. It recognized me for community engagement,
How are you engaging with the community?
sporting events, musical events, inspiring kids and athletes and adults.
That's amazing. So, were you sharing your personal story to inspire people? Let's start from the beginning. What happened in your life to bring you to where you are today?
Uh, I had some adversities, life challenges. I grew up in a single parent household of five. My mom had several kids by different men, and it creates a dynamic of an incentive for school districts to receive money from the government for learning support classes. There's also growing up in poverty where it became normal to me until I saw different ways of life. Like when I saw the Amish and men that live and they had multiple children, but all in one household with the same parents, and they didn't depend on the government for anything. So I
Is that
noticed
something?
something's
Go for it.
well, it was different in the sense of this is a new way of life, but it also shows me that men do care about being around their children.
You saw from seeing other families that men care about being around their children. Did you grow up feeling isolated?
I just felt like, and I look back on it now, I realize my parents never had a serious relationship together. But I also realized, my dad had already started a whole nother family. And he didn't give that reassurance to my mom that I'm gonna be there for you and all this other stuff will be exclusive. But at the same time I realized my mom didn't require no commitment either. Yet here I am. But ultimately I realized, as I start telling people later on in life that these are two people who checked out of co-parenting. And far too often, some people like to say they helped you out in your childhood, and later on in life they try to weaponize it against you. And then I gotta set boundaries when like, hey, you did that for me as a child and teenager. I don't need someone to throw it in my face.
It gets thrown in your face?
Yeah, it's like, for example, at family gatherings, like, the first situation, my cousin and her mom got drunk, under the influence of alcohol and started talking bad about me and my mom. And then my dad, and then eventually, I didn't want to talk to him about it at the family gathering because it's hard to talk to people who are intoxicated. So I ended up writing him a letter setting boundaries moving forward. And the one person I haven't talked to in almost 10 years, the other person I didn't speak to for several years until I ran into my uncle at the time. And, we kind of got talking and we're on better terms. But she knows that she started drinking alcohol. I'm walking away. Then the other situation was my other aunt on two occasions got drunk under the influence of alcohol and tried to force a conversation with me about my parents by grabbing my wrists. And that's considered assault, battery, let's see, false imprisonment, and harassment. And got to the point where I haven't spoken to her in 5 years. The only time I may have seen her was 2 years ago, and that was at funerals.
Do you mind if I ask who the funeral was for?
Oh, it was my aunt. That's my dad's sister.
How did you cope with
What'd you say?
how did you cope with the funeral?
I mean, it was with a person who was suffering from, a serious health condition for many, many years. I didn't know it was that serious until, she was in the hospital and she decided, enough's enough. She's ready to go. It's one of those situations where a person doesn't want to receive treatment anymore. They just want to go about their life and allow themselves to go off in the sunset. Eventually the health situation got worse without the treatment. And then when it was her time, it was her time. And when I it was more of a, the funeral was more of a memorial, not an open casket. But then there was a what's that thing called? A, repast, at
What's
this nice
that?
place about 20 minutes away. This is a time where people cheer up, have fellowship together, say a prayer, eat, and then eventually, people go on about their lives separately.
Right. So they're celebrating the time that has been and then they move into the next chapter of life.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
So you overcame the detachment of growing up with parents that were not really creating the family life that you believed you needed. Is that mainly what inspires your work for the community?
Do because I see a lot of kids that I can relate to, and I see certain single moms who kind of repeat this cycle of, not having a requirement, but also not knowing their worth. But then all of a sudden want to claim victim to having a child with a bad man when the reality is that they opened themselves up to that and they didn't properly vet them. Because what I noticed is that far too often, not all, but some women want to vet a man through tests and emotional intelligence. When the reality is that you gotta know a person's family history. What is their family known for? Who in your own family is gonna be willing to properly vet this man himself? And then there's also the reality of what is your purpose with this guy? And it can't be answered with, subliminal answers. You gotta be straightforward and be 100% about what it is that you're looking for.
You have to know what you want and know your worth. If you can believe it, this is really aligning so much because I live in an area where a lot of people don't know what they want and they get into, especially these days, they get into something that's not officially labeled as a relationship and everybody has a different idea of what's going to happen next and there isn't the commitment or the support. And then you're right, women are accepting that maybe because they think they can't find more than that? Or have you seen other reasons why they settle for less?
I realize that some people are not wanting to do the work on an individual level to become the healed version of themselves from underlying pain, wounds, scars, trauma. And unfortunately, you attract certain people with certain, energy and vibes. And it's not always about looking attractive. Like, for example, I could find a woman attractive across the room. That might be my initial attraction, but the underlying attraction could be, hold up, let me see. You grew up in a single parent household like me. And from a female's perspective, when they don't receive the daddy's love and guidance, far too often they turn to other vices and other ways of thinking to compensate. When the reality is that, we as a people have to know what type of time period do you want to have with that person you may be interested in? A season, marking period, a semester, a year. And when I look at marriages, I realize people are giving up too easy because they didn't go through premarital counseling. They didn't get rid of the excess baggage. They didn't work on themselves. They were more focused on the celebration of a wedding and reception, but not the journey and the marathon of a marriage. Because, the first years of transition, everything after that is just taking it one day at a time. But unfortunately, some people don't want to face things they need to face. And that also goes back to whether they prioritize their mental health. If you don't prioritize your mental health, you're going to drag people down with you. And we see that with people who are, unfortunately homeless, turn to drugs, certain addictions, people caught up in mass incarceration. Then we also have to look at the bigger perspective of this person doesn't even know their values. They don't even know their gifts and their purpose on earth. Because everyone's born with that. It's a matter of finding it. And for me, I found it and it was bigger than just doing sports.
So you found your value in more than sports, but did sport contribute to your personal value?
It did allow me to be around positive men that believed in me. Coaches for football, track, wrestling, basketball, and those were the males. Men that were educated, men that believed in me, men that were teaching me finish what you start, like that drill, the training, the recovery, and doing the work you need to be doing when nobody's looking. And I was able to apply those same principles to life where when it came to me writing my book, my first book, I got to finish what I start and go through the
Absolutely.
process. Same thing with cooking. We see ourselves cooking something before we actually eat it. So you got to have that vision. But unfortunately, some people, make excuses for why they want to be late, not be punctual for someone's time. But I realize they don't
Sorry
value
about
their
that.
own time. Yeah, it's just I realize they don't value their own time and they're not going to be respectful of somebody else's time.
I see. I see. I know that I personally become sometimes a bit distracted by things and then maybe overfilling the calendar, and people struggle to be on time because they're trying to overachieve and do too much and they overcommit. But do you think even when people are doing that, it's because they're not valuing their time enough to put a buffer in between?
Well, it depends on what they're trying to do. Like, for example, never go into a meeting, go into a blind meeting. Ask some preliminary questions to see if everything aligns with what you're doing ahead of time. So it's a matter of, what are you doing by the hour? And the important thing is don't spread yourself too thin.
Right.
As far as being
All of these
overachiever, far as being overachiever, it depends on what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to do, and when is the deadline for when they do achieve it. But also remember the catchphrase: "The top of the one mountain is the bottom of the next." So keep climbing. But ultimately, I realize you can have all the achievements in the world, but when it's your time to go on Earth, you can't take it with you. You can
what
leave
would
it
you say is
behind for
more
other people to
important?
learn.
What do you think is
I
more
would say,
important than the
I would
achievement?
say you can achieve a lot of things that's attainable, but the question is, what type of value does it add to other people's lives? I've seen people work 9 to 5 jobs, get injured in a job, and get replaced. I've seen people work 6, 7 figure careers, making all the money, but don't have as much family time or intimate time. I've seen people do more with less by making maybe 60,000 a year while having a balanced lifestyle.
Which one of those do you aim for?
Well, it depends on how it aligns with my time and what my value is. Like, for example, when I write my book, I write that more when I'm alone from people. Where people come in to help me is the editor, then it's the book cover designer. So when I make the audiobook, I go to the studio. Like it's a recording studio to do that. Then it's time to do the copyright. Then it's time to choose out the ISB numbers and everything else. So it's a matter of just keeping a balance on what aligns with what you want to do, because not all money's good money, because you gotta read the contracts, read the fine print, because you gotta know the business before you get into the business.
That's so true. And you mentioned that you had been on TV and you made all sorts of appearances. How do you decide where you're going to appear?
Well, the first time, it was a long time ago when I was a teenager. They interviewed me about something else going on in the city. At the time, I was nervous, didn't know what to say, but I learned a valuable lesson. Just be prepared. The last interview was me speaking at the Boys and Girls Club to the youths, how to overcome adversity, how they can become a better version of themselves. Another time I got interviewed was about survivor's remorse and how I still overcame adversity while receiving the NAACP award. The previous time before that was last year when I was featured on 6 ABC Extra News for speaking at Kings Highway Elementary School, where I was a keynote speaker there, thanks to the principal at the time, Dr. Bridget Miles, and the teacher, is Kara Mann. Ultimately, I've been on numerous podcasts, including yours. I've been featured in the newspaper, I was most recently featured in a magazine called the Review magazine. I was also featured in something else, but I'm not able to remember right now.
That's okay. You mentioned survivor's remorse. How does that tie into your experience?
A couple of errors. I lost my brother 15 years ago due to gun violence. I remember like it was yesterday. My mom got the call and she dropped on the floor. I never seen her cry so hard. And then I became the older brother overnight. Then they found the guy who did it almost 1,000 miles away from where my brother was living. He was caught by the U.S. Marshals. Then eventually, the guy was convicted. The getaway driver that was involved, he cooperated as an eyewitness. He didn't face any jail time. So he got a slap on the wrist with the law, but he lost something even bigger. He lost his marriage. His wife divorced him, took the kids. He was forced to pay alimony and child support. So he lost so much more just for being involved in something that was a careless act. Another survivor's remorse situation was me in a near death experience where I had a 99% chance of death versus 1% chance of life.
What happened?
My driver hit an 18-wheeler while under the influence of pharmaceutical medicine. Next thing you know, in a blink of an eye, my life changes.
How did your life change?
I should have been dead.
Right, right. So you thought that you were basically lucky to be alive. Did that change how you approach everyday life and your goals? Because did it show you that time is limited?
It showed me anything can happen to anybody. Time is sometimes limited based on how we look at it, but I also realize life is too short to be involved in, bad situations. Now I look at my life compared to others, like my life is a better version of itself now than it was 14 years ago. But I also look at those. I was in a different space, recovery, rehab, being on a feeding tube. When I look at where I'm at now, I realize there's people in prison that wish they were in my position, that can see the light of day, drive a motor vehicle, attend networking events, have their own business, but instead they have to live with the decisions they made that not only affected their life, but also the lives of others.
Absolutely. You mentioned rehab and a feeding tube.
Basically, I had to relearn how to walk again, do talk therapy, neck exercises, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Then my vocal cord got paralyzed, so I got put on a feeding tube for 5 whole months. That means I couldn't drink, I couldn't eat. It got so
You
bad
couldn't.
that yeah, I couldn't eat by mouth. It got so bad that I had to use a towel under my mouth when it was time to go to bed because my mouth would just drool.
That's after the car accident.
Yes.
That shows that we all need to have gratitude. We take for granted things like being able to eat,
Yeah. It
but
was a
you
journey
couldn't
of
do
not
that.
being able to consume anything because if I would have so much as consumed some water or took a bite of food by mouth, the consequences would have been pneumonia and it would have made things worse than what it already is. So
That is that's a shock. It's amazing that you survived all that. Did it take a lot of willpower and belief to get through those?
yeah, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, people coming in praying for me. There was a special anointing that was being put on prayer lists as I'm reading the Bible. I'm just like at the lowest point of low. And eventually I did come out on top where I was able to eat again, drink again. But then I go through some more stuff.
So you got better and then more things were happening.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, would one of the lessons to everybody be take it a day at a time?
Yeah, you could say that.
What are some of the other lessons that you share with people, especially when you're speaking? What do you tell people? I know that you talked about how women need to know their worth, but when maybe talking to people who are shifting into any sort of next stage or overcoming something, what is the toolkit that you wish everybody would use?
Just understand resiliency, that life is never easy. It doesn't matter how much money you're making, the nicest clothes. You're gonna have to face something you have to overcome in life. You don't have to do it alone. You can do it with a therapist, counselor, life coach, pastor, or people in your inner circle that can help you. Then there's also researching the thing you're going through and see the blueprint of how other people went from victim to victor or decide to be a victim. But either way, there's a cost to pay at being the victor because you're gonna stand out from the crowd.
There's a cost in standing out.
Well, it's like so many people want to start a pity party for things they had to overcome versus doing the work and realizing that somebody else already been through this and they overcame it. So let's look at how what they did. It's like the old saying, same game, just different people. Or in other words, same adversity, trauma, wounds, scar, just a different person.
Are you saying part of the solution is to find people who are a step ahead of you and get inspired by what they did to overcome similar obstacles?
Yes, because far too many times we think we're alone or may feel we're alone, but I realize on the other side of that energy, that's the waves of emotion, is answers, clarity, and closure on how to move forward. I realize some people overcome something just by hearing a certain statement, seeing a certain action. I know certain things are different for those who are blind and deaf. They overcome things a different way in their own language, whether it's reading through Braille, listening to audiobooks, sign language. I'm not the best, but I'm just giving an example like the peace sign. So
Those
yeah,
things
everyone has
work.
something to
There are
overcome.
solutions. You're saying whatever's going on, there's a solution to what people are facing.
Yes, there is, because this earth is over 2,000 years old. What isn't there not to overcome? Our elders have seen a lot in the many years of every ten years, which is a decade. So they've seen things and experienced things that this generation may not have experienced. They have a story to tell in simpler terms.
Circling back for a moment to how you're inspiring young people, for example, have you got any stories? I mean, only say what you can say because it's young people, but have you got any stories where someone heard
Can you
about
say
your
that again? We
experience
kind of
and
like,
then turned their life around?
can you say
Sorry,
that question again?
I'm wondering, have you, yeah, I'll ask the question again. I'm wondering, have you got any stories about how a young person or someone in your audience, when you were speaking, heard your story and then turned their lives around?
Yeah, there have been. Like, for example, there was this one kid who learned about my story. He told his mom about me, and it just so happened around that time I knew somebody that worked at the Milton Hershey School. Well, actually, they're an alumni of the Milton Hershey School. I introduced that person to that child's mom, and that child ended up going to the Milton Hershey School. And then after that, they went off to college and graduated with a college degree, being the first in their family
Great.
ever. And it was about relationships and connection. I help people join this one nonprofit organization. Like there's these two girls I knew when they were in middle school. I believe in them the first moment I saw them as they were playing on the basketball court and doing track. I was able to help them get into the program and eventually not only graduate high school together, they also graduated college together and they became the first in their generation. But ultimately, it's a matter of just looking out and providing resources to certain people who believe in themselves, but also want to do better for themselves on an individual level.
Do you think people need to want to change?
Yeah, they have to want it. Like, for example, there could be a guy who went through an intervention with the family who got tired of certain behavior patterns of a person trying to use them. And the problem why some people don't want to go to rehab because sometimes they don't want it bad enough because they haven't figured out why. And some people don't want to go on the other side and realize they need to face certain things that they've been putting off. But we can tell by, many stories, like, for example, there's one movie in a book called Homeless to Harvard, where this one girl was homeless for a good period of her life, and eventually she found support, and later down the road, she got accepted into Harvard, which is an Ivy League school that has one of the highest academic requirements to get involved in there. Another
It's
story could be the
competitive.
Michael Orr. Yes, another story could be the Michael Orr story, where he grew up in poverty and everything else, with the odds stacked against him, but there was his family that saw something in him. They took him in like their own child, helped him get into this private school. He signed up for football, basketball, ended up getting a full ride scholarship for football at Ole Miss, and then became a multi-millionaire by being drafted by the Baltimore Ravens.
That's
So those are
such a
two.
story,
Yeah.
it really is.
So those are two stories I can name right off the top of my head.
They turned their lives around.
Yes, with the right support system and people coming together for the greater good of humanity.
Support system and people coming together. What do you think the right support system should look like for communities, or do you think it's different for everybody?
The right support system comes with understanding who wants to add value, who wants to help you multiply, and also wants to see you become a better version of themselves, who wants to invest into you. And eventually you'll do the same for other people as well.
Help people to grow, and then they can help other people to grow.
It happens sometimes with teachers doing more than just a curriculum. You can show and coaches stand a little extra time with certain student athletes, making sure they have food, clothing, and other toiletries that they can go home with.
Make sure people have the basics. So it sounds like it starts, sure, motivation is great, but it sounds like it can also start with the bare essentials, the basic supplies people need.
Yes, it sure does. It's just a matter of just making sure we understand the right intentions behind it.
Okay. Do you sometimes see the wrong intention?
Yeah, I do. I've seen some people like want to donate stuff to certain people on the street, but then want to have their camera ready just to post it on social media for, clicks, something to go viral. When reality is that not everything needs to be posted on social media. It could be done just for the moment and then go on about their lives.
Interesting. Interesting. Do you think that some of the best things that can happen are offline? I know I believe that.
Yes, because not everything needs to be posted online that we do in real life. Because we take away mystery, we take away the element of surprise and what we're really doing without people seeing. And then you have other people feel different, like, are you doing this just to be posted on social media, just for your own good?
Absolutely. It's such a fine line. I'm wondering how people can really get their intention across, because sometimes we want to share a message to help people, and using traditional or modern media to spread that message, but then it can end up looking attention seeking, even if that's not the intention. How do you, because you've been with a good intention speaking to all sorts of audiences. So how do you make sure that people can see that you're genuinely trying to help? Is it about maybe just including moments that are offline, or what do you do?
It's times where some people are invited in. Sometimes some people are not invited and they end up in the situation. Like, for example, when I got interviewed on television and in the newspaper, they came to my workplace and took pictures and used it for B-roll. Then it was also kids involved, but it was for the purpose of sharing my story on what I'm doing in the present tense instead of what I overcame as a past tense. There can also be situations of I could be at a networking event and I could just be the person to be in the background and not have to worry about the spotlight being on me. There was a couple of times,
Right.
a certain individual There was a time where, a certain individual did want the attention on me just to well, I look back, it was kind of exploiting, trying to win the favor of, certain donors, sponsors, and prospective board members to come support his nonprofit. But I realized he should have made the time to ask me if I felt comfortable talking about that stuff. And
Right.
far
Did you
too
feel
often,
used?
I look back on it, I had to say yes because I just don't want someone at the time I wasn't comfortable talk about my near death experience because when I look back on it now, I realize sure I made the recovery. It's like some people see the outside like I recovered and everything. But what they don't realize is that there's a journey in that recovery. I just didn't get there.
It takes time.
Yeah, and like when a person's on like all those medicines and gets off, they went from their bodies I went from my body's five senses being numb, like desensitized to when I get off, feel like a different person. Something seems different, but I ultimately realized looking back that there's certain things that should have been addressed much sooner than later. Eventually, I did have that talk with that guy last spring and tell him
Which
this is the
guy?
reason why I didn't feel comfortable talking about it because I was going through survivor's remorse. He
Right,
didn't know
right.
about it. I didn't know about it. And he was able to have a better perspective and gave more
Do you
clarity.
think that do you think that various forms of media creators might be on their own learning curve trying to understand how to relate to people who have gone through something?
The media already knows how to relate to people, going back to when television was black and white. Also, when the newspapers were more in demand than ever, and there's also on the radio and telegrams, all
So
that
it's
other
not new,
stuff.
that's what you're saying.
It's not new. It's just everyone has a voice due to technology being available to different hands. And now it's a matter of fact checking if someone's telling the truth or not. And the only way to find out is test it in a logical and evidential way. For example, my story is true because, you know, the first story that was reported about me was, me being in critical condition in the newspaper. And 10 years later, I finally get a updated version where it shows me being an evolved version of myself. College graduate, self published author, earned 3 certifications as a mediator, restorative justice in circles
Amazing.
facilitator, and mental health first aider. Earned other awards and accolades, and it shows, social media just adds more value to it than what I already have added value to myself.
Are you saying that people in this story were skipping straight from your your accident to the achievement? It's important to acknowledge the journey that happens to get from one side to the other.
Yeah, because there's certain things that people didn't understand. It's like they saw me cross the finish line, overcome, adversity, but they didn't realize the mental aspect of it, the emotional aspect. I'll say this again. When I was desensitized with all those pharmaceutical medicines, it's like, let's say, for example, I come over to your place in Australia, we have lunch, I shake your hand, we feel that connection. But if I shake your hand with an oven mitt, you're not gonna feel a connection because that's what the medicine does. It desensitized me to where I didn't feel any emotion. I didn't feel
You
no
couldn't
sensory.
you couldn't feel emotions as well as physical
I couldn't feel it. I
feelings?
couldn't feel it from here because medicine goes just at the neurology to the brain, which controls all the nerve systems all over. And then I realized when a person goes through all that, when they get off the drugs and everything, unfortunately, we see why people would get addicted to opioids because they like that feeling to cope with life instead of doing
How
the
does
work.
that happen?
Well, what happens is when a person has all that downtime being on all these drugs, they feel like, depending on how a person's mindset is, they feel like they could just turn to the drugs instead of doing the work from within. with their mental
Right.
health. And then when you take away the pharmaceutical drugs, unfortunately, some people don't want to go to therapy or see a counselor. And they start doing things to get back on the drugs again, to get that high, the illusion again. For me, I did the opposite. I did the work and became a better version of myself without being addicted.
Are you saying that these people can't cope with life and they use those substances to cope with their everyday existence?
Yeah, yeah, they do. It's no different than someone using coffee to cope with life
I drink a
because
lot of coffee.
I'm just saying, like, too much of anything is not good for us.
Right.
I just only use coffee as an analogy because I see some people are looking for that caffeine rush in the morning, but I realized there could have been something else I could have consumed in the morning, like a cold pressed juice that's organic, a smoothie, or even what else could they consume? They could consume a kombucha. It's basically a fermented drink that cleans up the
I know
gut.
kombucha.
Yeah, that. So what I'm saying is there's alternative things to be drinking besides looking for that caffeine high. I'm not
Because
saying it,
coffee is what it's technically a bit of a drug, isn't it? Coffee.
well, it's not necessarily a drug because that's not what it was designed for. It just turns into an addiction because somebody wants to cope with life or want to
Right.
get that rush, which is like a substitute. But I realize when a person works on themselves, they don't need that rush of caffeine anymore. I'm just only saying that as an example, not that coffee is a drug. Because according to
I
the
understand.
FDA, Food and Drug Administration, coffee is not a drug. It's just something that people consume.
I understand. Now, I think what we're saying though is that people need to do the wellness habits. And I think that here's the thing, wellness has become such an industry and glorified, and some people become skeptical about the consumerism of wellness. However, in a simple, everyday, common sense way, we all need those wellness habits to really cope with the complexities of life. So we don't then end up turning to things that on the surface appear to make us feel better, but they're actually causing damage.
I mean, wellness is important to practice every day, all year round. That's how we become a better version of ourselves. That's how we learn to cope with life much better and face things head on. But also, it can be done in a group setting where you have support. There's some people who are more experienced in certain areas to help us become a better version of ourselves. I'll just say the information is out there available in books, ebooks, audiobooks. Then there's also
There's
on the
almost no
internet.
excuse then.
Well, excuse is one thing, but it's a matter of does a person feel motivated and do they want it bad enough? And so far, with the information that's out now, some people are definitely making changes in their lives.
Absolutely. There's so much available. There are so many resources. So I'm wondering if you want to sort of wrap up and give a message out to anyone who's trying to turn life around. What are three key lessons that you would want everybody to know about turning life?
Don't invest more than you can afford to lose or your decisions. And the people you be around the most is who you like to become. And be willing to understand that, there is beauty for your underlying pain, wounds, and scars, or you can turn it around for the greater good.
Great lessons. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your vulnerable experiences.
You're very welcome.
It has been great to hear from you. So, this is Ethan Poetic.
Yeah, that's me. I'll just give a wrap up and say if people want to follow me, they can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn. My username is Ethan Poetic or Ethan Poetic 23. Also for serious speaking engagements or opportunities on the summit, a panel, or your event, you can book me through ethanspeaks.com.
Awesome. Reach out to Ethan Poetic. Okay, thanks for talking.
You're welcome.